Welcome into today's video. My name's Jeremy Haynes. I'm gonna help you condition your pixel to get qualified people consistently through your funnels. Whether that be a webinar funnel, an opt-in funnel, a call funnel, even purchase funnels, I'm gonna dramatically increase your probabilities by the time that this video is finished to help you have qualified, consistent leads flowing through whatever funnel it is that you're driving traffic through. All we talk about on this channel is hitting $1 million months, and having a conditioned pixel increases that probability dramatically. Keep in mind, the probability is 0.1% of businesses ever hit or exceed $10 million a year. To do $1 million months, AKA $12 million a year, already has substantially low odds. The things that I talk about here on my channel are all intended based on experience from me helping clients over the last decade plus as a marketing agency and taking almost 40 different businesses to that benchmark. I'm intending to hand down lessons to you that ideally increase your odds. By no means do I promise that you're gonna hit $1 million months. You have a 0.1% chance of that happening, but still, knowing the lessons that can get you there increase your probabilities dramatically. If you're new to the channel, check out all my other videos. They're all full of top-level game to help you ideally make some more money regardless of whether you hit $1 million months or not. But again, all the lessons are from businesses that have. Okay, if you're already a subscriber to the channel, welcome back. Pleasure to have you here. Let's jump right in. How to condition your pixel, or for some of you, how to recondition your pixel because you've sent a bunch of junk turds to your pixel on specific standard events, and you're sitting here wondering, what do I do if I already fucked myself? So allow me to start from the top of why the pixel being conditioned properly even matters. We'll then work our way down to how to condition it with some best practices for different funnel types. And then from there, we'll talk about reconditioning in the instance that you've already fucked yourself. To start at the top. This all matters because every single advertising algorithm leverages a pixel nowadays to send data back to it to then determine who it's most probable to go after next. Pixels operate off of recency bias. So recency bias, for all those who do not know, is simply put, you have a recent amount of data that you are gonna leverage more so than all of the historical data. It'd be as if I consistently got great months in terms of ROAS, month over month over month, with a specific funnel and strategy. In one specific month, let's say that things went bad. It'd be as if you were a business owner acting as though that strategy no longer functions and works because you throw out all of the historical data and only use the recent data to determine what's happening, whether it's working or not, and what you're gonna do next as a result. Pixels are very similar to that logic. Yes, they do use the historical reference of data that's accumulated on the pixel and the standard events associated with it, but more so they use the recent data to determine who it should be going after next. So for all those who don't know, first of all, you have a pixel. Every single ad platform has a pixel that is, simply put, accumulating data that's sent back to it. The simple way to articulate a pixel is that it's used for reporting, to be able to successfully demonstrate when somebody off of the platform that you used to send the traffic somewhere else got a result for you by doing so. So if I'm using Facebook and Instagram or TikTok or Google AdWords or LinkedIn or whatever ad channel, when I send that person off of the platform somewhere else, this is just simply a way for other websites to communicate back to the ad channel that a result happened off of the ad channel. Simple enough, right? And that is definitely a function of the pixel. But what's more powerful to understand about the pixel is that the data that comes back to it heavily influences and dictates who your ads are probable to target next. It works in waves, what we call prediction batches. So these prediction batches, you can also look at like buckets, okay? And when you have a bucket that's full of good quality people, and then you got some buckets later on that are full of not so good people, let's number these buckets 1, 2, and 3. And let's say bucket 1 is some qualified people. Let's say bucket number 2 is some unqualified people. And then let's say over here, that bucket number 3 is a mix of both. And let's use the example that each one of these buckets has a total of 100,000 people in it. Now, when you are targeting anybody, whether it's lookalike audiences, interest stacks, broad targeting, customer lists, warm audiences, you do not reach everybody within that given audience. You reach the people that are the most probable to convert. So every pixel has something referred to as a standard event. And this is what you select when you optimize a campaign. Some examples of standard events: if you run a call funnel, you might use something like schedule or complete registration. Some of you are using lead. shouldn't be doing that, but we'll talk about that shortly. You have lead, which is great for opt-in funnels, very surface level actions. You have purchase, which is great. You can also send back the amount that somebody's spending when they purchase something to further help optimize campaigns. I'll talk about some conspiracies associated with that here shortly. Now, there's plenty of other standard events that exist, some of which you'll never use and that you'll never optimize for, but to give you a comprehensive example, there's standard events like search, donate, app install, view content, submit application, schedule, complete registration, purchase, add to cart, initiate checkout, and several others, some of which are specific to ad channels and some of which are used universally by all ad channels. You also have, outside of standard events, what's known as a custom conversion. Custom conversions are business-defined events. They can be linked to a standard event, but in some instances, you can signal a custom conversion occurred without linking it to a standard event. That'll come in handy here momentarily as we continue our education journey together here. Let's use the example I optimize campaigns for leads, and then I navigate to my ad set level or ad group level, depending on the platform you're using. You are then going to come across your ad targeting. You can target whoever you want, and depending on your account, sometimes your targeting is just suggestion, other times your targeting is definitive, meaning it only reaches who you actually targeted. Depends on your account, what the settings are for whether you default to broad targeting and suggestion-based targeting, or whether you are in control, you are the ad master and getting to influence who it actually reaches. Here's a very important thing to understand that also happens on the ad level. You select the pixel that you're typically going to optimize with. You also select the specific standard event. If it's not clear yet, different standard events are going to dictate who you reach out of everybody that you're probable to reach. So let me use this 100,000 person example here on a spectrum visualization. So here we have our 100,000 people, and let's say that this is from bucket number 1, okay? Out of these 100,000 people, and let's use the example you're optimizing for the schedule standard event, there might be 10% of that specific 100,000 that are actually probable to convert on that specific standard event of schedule. There might be upwards of 20% that are probable to respond to the standard event of lead. These are totally made up percentages, by the way. The percentage can vary wildly based on who you're targeting, how many people out of who you're targeting are probable to convert. These are also unknown percentages until you spend some money and find your frequency starts to go up. So you do get the opportunity to see an estimated audience size if you're doing cold targeting and not doing warm audience targeting. Depending on what warm audience targeting you do, you can see previews of audience sizes, but sometimes when you add particular warm audiences to your targeting options, you no longer have visibility into estimated audience sizes. I digress. You can generally see with the estimated audience size what your 100,000 is going to look like, and you can also from there start to determine with a roundabout figure, you're only going to reach out most about 10% of that demographic, if that. Sometimes it could be far fewer. It also depends on your messaging on your ads, your videos on your ads, your forms associated with your ads, and of course your landing pages and everything on your landing pages as well throughout the entirety of your funnel. Anything that's pixeled, anything that has traffic being sent to it will be crawled and will also be factored in for who you're probable to reach out of the 100,000. You have to keep in mind, Facebook and any ad platform for that matter has tens of thousands of data points per user, both current data points and historical data points. Some examples of historical data points that they would leverage in this example would be all of the previous events that that user has had associated with their profile. So if I have a lead who consistently is opting in for things, but they never book calls, they never fill out applications, and they never buy anything, that person has a very strong probability to get targeted by a standard event of lead, okay? Anybody who has historically opted in for things has a high probability out of the 100,000 people to get hit by a campaign that's optimizing for that standard event. Couple that with the interests and those tens of thousands of other data points per user that they have for interests, what the person might be probable to convert on besides just the fact they've historically converted on that type of standard event and that campaign optimization. It also is factoring in whether the user, based on what you're marketing to them, is probable to convert or not. So that further slims your probability of reaching everybody within your audience that even has a history of converting on those specific standard events. You gotta keep all that in mind when you're marketing, because you are going to experience this in every single campaign that you ever launch that is incorporating a pixel and a standard event. Now, out of this 100,000 people, again, let's reference the fact that we have a scheduled standard event that we've selected that we wanna optimize for, and we're only gonna reach maybe 10,000 people out of this 100,000 that are probable to convert, that have historically converted, or that Facebook or any other ad platform for that matter just deems as probable to convert based on their interests and based on what you're advertising coupled together. What they're gonna do is they're gonna move through this bucket system. They're gonna show bucket number 1 first, not all 100,000, it might only be 10,000 in this example, and then it's gonna move to bucket number 2 and show those people, and then it's gonna move to bucket number 3 and show those people. And in an initial campaign's launch, I'm gonna use the example that you've had zero history on your pixel up to this point, optimizing for that specific standard event. Let's say it's a brand new account, brand new pixel. Doesn't matter if it's a brand new account or not, let's just assume it's a brand new pixel. And again, you've selected a standard event that pixel has zero history with. This is the system that it utilizes. It's a prediction machine. It predicts who's probable to convert, and it moves through those buckets. So at first, when your campaign launches, assuming that the qualified people are the first bucket it reaches, you might have a good couple conversions where you're like, man, these are good qualified people coming through the funnel. The second bucket has a lot of unqualified people. So as you continue to spend, you start to notice some deteriorating results. Maybe your cost per result starts to climb and your result volume starts to decline. Now you're a little concerned, but it finishes rotating through that bucket of people and it moves on to bucket number 3. Bucket number 3 has a mix of both. So you start to notice your result volume of good people increasing again, and you start to notice your cost per result for good people coming in going down as well. This seems random to most people. This seems chaotic to the blind eye. As you look in your ads manager or whatever reporting mechanism you use, you sit there confused. You're like, well, it initially went after really good people and I got really good people through the funnel as a result. And then out of nowhere, I just had this batch of turds and I'm not understanding why I just all of a sudden got a batch of turds. And then most of you at that point alone, you'll not continue the conditioning process. You'll just stop and you'll start to make a bunch of reactive changes. That is a gigantic mistake and it fucks a tremendous amount of in the unknown, blind, fucks that type of advertiser the most. The people who do know how conditioning a pixel works, they just kick back and they continue to let it spend because they know that they are currently in the conditioning phase of a pixel. This is where most advertisers never make it out the other side. Here's what happens after you get past the third bucket. And this is really cool, by the way. So at this point, if you just look at this phase overall as the conditioning phase, and let's use the example that to get through this conditioning phase, you had to spend a total of $2,000, okay? So that was your budget to work through this specific conditioning window. Well, now your pixel, let's use the example that it has dozens of people that have been qualified, allowed to report back to the pixel as a qualified standard event. And now, what's the pixel start to do from here? Well, it no longer uses randomness and its own predictions as much. Instead, it takes the data points of those people who hit the pixel and were in your ads manager in that results column. It takes the data points of those users specifically, and instead of just guessing who it should go after next, it says, well, let me find a lot more people that are similar to these folks that have already hit the pixel. Because if this advertiser is continuing to spend budget with me, that means that they want more of these types of people, and that means they're satisfied. So let me go find more people like that. And that's exactly what it does. Instead of just continuing this, it moves into a system where it officially goes into the fourth bucket. And the fourth bucket, if you've conditioned your pixels successfully, these are all qualified people or have a high probability to be qualified people. Not only that, there might be more than 100,000 people that are in this bucket because you've gotten a good enough amount of data on the pixel for that specific standard event for it to know, okay, well, I've got a tremendous amount of other users that are the most similar to this demographic that's already converted on this user's pixel. Let me go find more people like that. So again, you might have far more than 100,000 people now that you can actively move through, which means instead of only having 10,000 that are probable to convert out to 100,000, you might have 100,000 now because because you have 1 million people that are probable to convert. And the more data that the pixel accumulates for that standard event that you are optimizing for, that hits that results column inside of the ads manager, the more that audience grows, the more confident it becomes, the more it leans into that specific demographic that's converting. So at this point, you'll start to understand some pretty obvious things, but let me state them out loud for those that are a little overwhelmed at this point, just for summarization purposes. Yes, if you allow a bunch of turds to come through and hit your pixel and you go through the conditioning phase, yeah, it's gonna go after a bunch more turds instead of a bunch more qualified people. Yeah. On the opposite of that, if you've only passed back qualified people to that pixel associated with that standard event that you're optimizing your campaigns for, it goes and finds more people that are qualified. It's not fucking rocket scientists, it's pixel conditioning. You see? Okay, now let me go through a few things for those of you who are sitting here that are wondering what you do if you've already fucked yourself and sent a bunch of junk to a pixel. Well, first of all, sometimes you have to factor in it operates off recency bias. So the good news for you is that yes, you have a history of junk traffic, and yes, when you launch a new campaign and you send the traffic to that funnel, it's gonna go after unqualified people like it historically has. But if you don't send the unqualified people back to the pixel, it starts the reconditioning process of reworking your pixel to only go after qualified people again. So you have your ads, okay? And in your ad videos, you know, you're out here optimizing for whatever, and you send people over to a funnel to take an action. Now, in your funnel, you need to have conditional logic that separates the brokies, okay? We call this brokey bait, okay? Brokey bait is critical. Brokey bait takes people to a separate confirmation page, okay? The confirmation page that the brokies go to is not pixeled, okay? You don't have to pixel a page. It's a choice. So you either do not pixel it. That's the simplest thing that I can give you here on YouTube to do. Some more advanced strategies I'll talk to you about right now. You can create a conversion, like a custom conversion for brokies, just for tracking purposes. We don't optimize our campaigns for the custom conversions. We solely do it to quantify if the brokey bait is working or not, so we can see the ratio of how much money we're spending on brokies. Sometimes this is advantageous to do because what you'll learn is that you might have a large quantity of brokies coming through your funnel, and that might make sense to, instead of having this be a thank you page or just a standard confirmation page, this could become a downsell where you use the brokies to liquidate the ad spend of your funnel. You don't want to put too much attention into this because all it's intending to do is liquidate spend. It's not generally the most profitable thing that you could keep your attention on. And I'm a huge advocate for keeping attention on ROI-driven actions exclusively in order of what makes the highest revenue down to things that make the least revenue. This specific action will be at the bottom level of my list in almost all instances. But if you have enough and it makes sense and they're not horridly broke, I'll give you a great example. So we have a client where the brokies are making 150K a year or less. And the people who are technically qualified answer with, they make 150K a year or more. Now, these people who make 150K a year or less, they generally never qualify or are able to purchase the $15,000 or $25,000 product that this business regularly sells. So what did this business do? They took their brokies who make the 150K or less, they pushed them through to a specific team of closers who are usually the newest closers, who are training, and they sell them a $5,000 product. Although this business regularly spends $10,000 to sometimes $15,000 a day in ad spend, over the course of a week, the brokey funnel, the downsell at a $5,000 price point can usually liquidate about $30,000 to $50,000 in spend. That's pretty good because although it doesn't get it profitable, it alleviates the ad spend and makes the people who are qualified that much more profitable per sale. Brokey bait is tremendous, more so to focus it and isolate it for this lesson to deny the wrong people from hitting your pixel. Because you got to remember, the pixel is most important. We want to have qualified people come back and hit that pixel. The qualified people, okay, the folks who are good, those are the people that we do want to send back to the pixel, okay? And same thing, this is just a confirmation page. It is pixeled and it does send the standard event back to the Facebook pixel, back to the Google AdWords pixel, back to the LinkedIn pixel, the TikTok pixel, etc. So it does send the data back, okay? This is critical to do. So when the right people are successfully sending that data back to your pixel, and your pixel sits there and accumulates all that good qualified people, and it never sees the wrong people at all, ever, okay? That starts the reconditioning process. Because it's important to note, yes, if you've already fucked your pixel and you gotta go through the reconditioning process and you don't wanna start a brand new one, because you still get some good qualified people through there, the best thing that you must do, literally right now, is to somehow separate your traffic to different pages after they've taken the qualifying action. If they answer with the brokey bait, they go to a specific confirmation page that the pixel doesn't see. If they are qualified, they go to the qualified confirmation page, which we want the pixel to see. We want that data coming back to the platform that you're sending the traffic from. This starts the conditioning process. Now, there's a few caveats to this I want to make extremely clear. Number one, in the short term, you're going to be spending money and you're going to get far fewer people hitting your results column, so it's going to look like you have an inflated cost per result for whatever you've historically optimized for. Let me say this as clear as I can, because to me, I think this is one of the silliest things that I even have to say, but still, it's really good perspective if you're scared when that happens. Okay, so pay attention to this part if you're gonna have to go through the reconditioning process. You've historically gotten that exact cost per result for your qualified people coming through the funnel. You don't actually have a more expensive cost per result. You're just, for the first time in your life and for the first time in your ads manager and pixels life, seeing what the qualified people are for a cost per result. Because most of you don't do fucking math and quantify what a qualified person costs to come through your funnel versus an unqualified person. So yeah, if you've historically gotten 100 people per day to take the action in your funnel, and you've historically gotten 5 that have been qualified, and let's say that you spend $100 a day, so your cost per lead is historically $1, okay? Because again, 95 have been unqualified, 5 have been qualified, but to you, in your ads manager, and to your pixel, you've been getting 100 results a day. But again, 5 have been qualified. So when you switch to having brokey bait, and 95 out of 100 people no longer come back and hit your pixel, and you start the reconditioning process, you're still spending the same $100 a day, your cost per result's gonna look fucking nuts. It'll go from $1 in my hypothetical example to $20 per result, because you got 5 people for the $100. 5 times 20, $100. That's your daily budget. So although it looks like your cost per result went from $1 to 20, that's been your cost per qualified result. And guess what? You're still gonna get fucking brokies anyway, in the instance you have some system or team or setter team or whatever you're using dedicated to calling the fucking turds, okay? Here's the thing that you have to understand. You successfully sitting back and just letting the conditioning process occur is what's gonna get you out the other side, where you have a higher quantity of people that are qualified when you finally get to the 4th bucket onward after the conditioning phase occurs. Yeah, you might spend a couple $1,000s where your cost per result's gonna artificially look higher, but you gotta remember, that's the conditioning phase. You have to get through the conditioning phase. On the other side of the conditioning phase, here's what you can look forward to. You can look forward to more results that are qualified per day. You can look forward to a cheaper cost per qualified result. You can look forward to more consistency in qualified results, qualified leads, etc. coming through your funnel. If you abandon the conditioning process and you do not endure through it, you'll never endure through it, and you'll constantly be stuck in this position you're in now, where you have to deal with a fuckload of unqualified people because perceptually you're caught up on the idea that more people per day coming in as a result, even though you're dirtying up your pixel, you're allowing a bunch of fucking turds to hit your pixel, therefore you're allowing the advertising algorithm to go find a bunch more turds. You'll never see the fucking glory of the other side of the conditioning phase because you can't endure the conditioning phase. Simple enough. But again, if you can't endure the conditioning phase, you will never get to the glory. You see? It's that simple. You'll never get the result if you don't push through that hole, okay? It's that simple. Now, I cover in detail qualifying questions that you should ask for brokey bait We literally just did a call on this in my Inner Circle program for our weekly group calls on this past Saturday, going through application funnel best practices, going through how you can add Brokey Bait to webinars. In addition to that, how you can add Brokey Bait to instant forms within the platforms, opt-in funnels, etc. And I can't stress it enough. If you're already making a good couple $100,000 a month, okay, or even high tens of thousands of dollars a month, like you're real close to $100,000 a month, I'd really encourage you get in my Inner Circle program because you've gotten this far doing a bunch of dumbass actions that are not best practices. Imagine how much more money you'd make if I put you on game to things like this in detail, reviewed your funnel in our twice a month one-on-one calls, get the ability to shoot me DMs in real time. I'll send you videos, voice notes, answer your questions. In addition to that, we do our weekly group calls, quarterly masterminds in person here in the penthouse in Miami, Florida. On top of that, we have our group chat full of people like me, rich people trying to get a hell of a lot richer, people like you trying to actively improve their funnels, their businesses, and make more money. You get tremendous perspective when you're around a bunch of rich folks. It pays for itself so easily. It's a fucking no-brainer decision for somebody that, again, is rich, trying to get a hell of a lot richer. The link's in the description. I'd really encourage you to apply if you haven't done so already. Let me just stress this really clearly though, before we finish our video here today. You have to do this, okay? I'm gonna give you one more example outside of call funnels. We're gonna talk about webinars real quick. So in a webinar call funnel or in a webinar purchase funnel, what you're usually optimizing for is the standard event of lead. In some instances, you're registering with a complete registration standard event firing back. In other instances, it can even be a custom conversion, okay? Custom conversions are typically still linked to a standard event like lead or complete registration, but in some instances, they're not. In some instances, you're using a custom conversion, not linked to any standard event. The downsides of doing that is the ad platform you're using to send the traffic from, it doesn't know what your standard event technically is because it's a custom conversion. So it's not gonna leverage any of the data for who's probable to take that action. It's only gonna leverage who you're targeting against the messaging in your creatives and on the lander that you're sending the traffic to. That can be advantageous in your reconditioning phase. Or if you've historically optimized around a specific standard event, you still get a very high ratio of unqualified to qualified people. Custom conversions can be advantageous. I typically default to leveraging standard events because I generally see a far lower cost per result and a far greater quantity of results using standard events because the ad platforms have a gigantic database of all their active users that are potentially going to get targeted by your ads and the actions they've historically taken and not taken. I'd rather play into the database that they already have accumulated on all these users we're targeting rather than using a custom conversion, which they have no historical data on beyond what we've already accumulated on it for our businesses in an isolated fashion comparatively where we have no database leverage. So for me, it always makes sense to use standard events, but again, to each their own. Let's use the example, you have a webinar campaign and you're optimizing for lead. So there's a few stages to the webinar, right? We have our opt-in page, which is generally the first step. This then leads to the actual webinar itself, which if you're doing a live webinar, an automated webinar, an on-demand webinar, can dictate what you also have the opportunity to optimize for. In some webinar funnels, from there, you're driving people to a checkout page, and from there, you then have your purchase that occurs, which you can also optimize for. In other webinars, you are optimizing for a call. So you'll send people over to the application/scheduler page. Then you'll have your call confirmation, which is just usually a thank you page. And then from here, you have a few other things that you can optimize for as well, which include a showed up call. And in addition to that, you have the same thing where you have people who purchase. Now, each one of these represents a something that you can optimize for. That something is a standard event. You have to be able to map each one of these. So as an example, after somebody opts in, that's where I can leverage my lead and my complete registration standard event to fire off, which is the first step in the funnel. That's generally a really good thing to optimize for, but, and this is a big but, it depends on if you have Brokey Bait or not in the opt-in itself. So if I only capture name, email, or name, email, and phone, and that's all I capture, I'm not optimizing for quality there. All I'm doing is just optimizing for the result. I'm therefore still gonna be very susceptible to having brokies and unqualified people come through that standard event. And then I'm conditioning my pixel to continue to go find more people like that. The simplest best practice you could do on a webinar, as an example, is add one qualifying question as brokey bait to your opt-in. It could be name, email, phone, and then that singular question. That singular question does the same thing that we talked about up here, where the confirmation page, or even the webinar page, if it's an on-demand webinar, you just create a duplicate version of it. You have the page that the brokey/unqualified people go to, which is not pixeled, or you have the page that the qualified people go to. This page specifically is what you'd be optimizing for and where you'd have your lead or complete registration standard event firing off from. We had a client recently who just onboarded with us. They were spending upwards of $400,000 a month on a webinar funnel optimized with a checkout, a direct to checkout. No call funnel, just straight up purchase, about a $3,500 price point. The agency that they were historically working with was optimizing for two things. Purchase, which is great. That means that all the people that they were allowing through the funnel, anybody that actually got to the point where they bought, that would fire off back to the pixel and say, hey, this person came through the webinar and they purchased. They were getting about $1,000 to upwards of $1,500 for a cost of a $3,500 product. Pretty good. In addition to that, they were doing a pretty decent volume of purchases through that specific campaign type because they were spending $400,000 a month. That's arguably great. However, that didn't get them enough volume per webinar. This particular client did weekly live webinars. So they also ran a campaign optimized for complete registration, but they did not have a brokey bait question. So what started to happen through time is initially, for a good several months in a row, bucket one, they were using the complete registration standard event, optimizing around the opt-in, no brokey bait question. Everybody who opted in, qualified or unqualified, went to the same confirmation page and fired back to the Facebook platform in Pixel. It worked really well for a good few months. Time went on, they started to get a lot of unqualified people in, and they were confused, but they had a mandate of how many people they needed to hit the pixel week over week, how many people they needed registered for the webinar week over week. So they had to continue to spend through it. They then got to the point where instead of reaching the promised land after the conditioning, where it was a bunch of qualified people, they had accumulated so many unqualified people that hit the complete registration standard event that every single webinar they ran forward kept diminishing in ROAS. The return on ad spend just kept going down. The agency, the client, they were really confused. They were like, what the fuck's going on? And on top of that, a kind of worst case scenario occurred. Their purchase standard event campaigns stopped spending money. They weren't seeing any spend go out on those campaigns. Was it a glitch? Did they run out of people that they were targeting that were probable to convert for purchase? Hard to tell, but it simply put, stopped spending and that agency didn't know what to do. And all they could do was push more spend into that complete registration standard event optimized set of campaigns. And again, more and more and more, webinar by webinar, week over week, unqualified people kept accumulating on the pixel and the return on ad spend kept diminishing to the point where this client saw a video like what you're watching here now and said, I need to talk to Big Germ. Let me give this guy a call. We get on the phone with them. To us, it's obvious. We articulate the exact set of lessons I just shared with you to this new client. And we say, look, we got to add a brokey bait question. So literally all we did, we added one question to this webinar. I'm gonna give you this question rather than holding it back on you, okay? The one question we added as brokey bait was, we are going to make an offer in this webinar that costs a few $1,000s. Are you open to spending that amount if the offer makes sense for you? Yes or no? Oh my God, the amount of people that were saying no, that we still allowed to go watch the webinar, that still occasionally would make money, but those people would never see the pixel. The pixel had no fucking clue those people were coming through the funnel. It knew that it was sending them to the site, but it assumed they weren't opting in. The pixel assumed that those people it was sending there weren't taking the action, so it stopped sending that type of person to the pixel. Instead, the people who said yes and then gave name, email, and phone, those people were the only people that the pixel knew about. It all of a sudden started finding more people that were answering the brokey bait question in the right way. It turned ROAS around overnight. The next week's webinar, instead of like a 1.6 ROAS that it was at that point where it had diminished down to, and all the way back up to a 3.4 ROAS. Gets better and better every week that goes by. I love pixel conditioning. You should love pixel conditioning. It makes a tremendous difference to the results that you're gonna experience in your ad platforms. If you want lessons like this in a lot more depth than what I've just covered with you here, and you want somebody to hold you accountable in taking these actions, I'll happily hold your hand as you make a fuckload more money, and I'll teach you exactly what to do, and I'll make sure you're doing it properly. And I assume, to be clear, that yes, you're gonna take action on what you just learned in today's video. I hope you do so in its entirety and don't just nitpick what you think you should apply to this or what you think is applicable to you. This is a very well-rounded lesson I've just given you, and all of it is applicable. It should not be piecemealed or nitpicked through. You need to actually do all of it. If you find yourself taking action on what I've talked about in any of my videos and you make money, imagine how much more money you'd make if you paid for one of my offers. You would make tremendously more. You know it, I know it. It makes sense to do. Check the links in the description for all the offers that I currently have available to you. I'd love to help you get richer. It's my favorite thing to do. I get physically like the rush of a high when I help people hit $1 million months firsthand, help them get an extra couple $100,000 a month in the door, whatever it is. My happiness is pegged to you getting richer. And me getting richer comes down to you getting richer. And I would naturally, based on that incentive, love to help you make more money. I'd love for you to check out one of my offers, such as my Inner Circle program, twice a month one-on-one calls, weekly group calls on Zoom. They are tremendous, in-depth, very informative, all geared towards helping you get richer. Quarterly masterminds, right here in person in Miami, Florida. We have a big old movie theater downstairs where we have our speakers, generally from the group, come in, teach, and talk about what's getting them richer so you can learn firsthand from their lessons and my lessons, network with one another. We have a 2,500 square foot balcony out here where we come up to at night and all day on Sunday, and we hang out and just network with one another. We have amazing food. I'd love for you to experience it, and we have our group chat on Telegram, all rich people trying to get a hell of a lot richer than they are right now. We'd love to have you if you qualify. Check out the link in the description for all the details and the application to go through. We have our hands-on agency services, which are now available on an application basis. The link's in the description for that as well. I'd love for you to check it out. We also turn all of our videos into blogs now on jeremyhaynes.com. So if you prefer to consume information in a more efficient format, but with not as much detail, to be fair, you can go to the jeremyhaynes.com blog and check out all the latest videos transcribed into blogs for your benefit and consumption. And I would love, if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel. At the least, drop me a like or something. Give me a comment about what you got out of it or what your take is on this same topic. And I would love more than anything else for you to go get richer with the information I just taught you. Have fun. See you in another video. Bye.